Hello, welcome back to Rare Reads. Coming at you from my dad's office in my dad's swivel chair. Sorry, it's a tip. No box room Jesus, but we have got instead Tricky Trev's Barmy Army up there, Sheffield Wednesday from the glory days, the 90s when I used to watch football, when I was a football fan. Right, so today is going to be me just chatting about my favourite thing, the books of Drew Gummerson. I did say ages ago I was going to do a rank order, so that's what this is. And this will be, the last one really with Drew for a bit, because obviously I've read them all now and I've done full reviews on them all. So if you like the sound of any of them, go and check out my full reviews as well. But there will be some spoilers in them. I'll try not to do spoilers on this one. Okay, let's get into it. So starting with number 1, I'll explain later why I'm doing it from 1 down to 4. We do things different on Rare Read, you know that. So my number 1 top Drew, and it was very, very difficult to choose one out of the 4, but I've gone for 7 Nights at Flamingo Hotel and the follow-up, which is a little chapbook called You. I'll talk about that in a minute. So 7 Nights then, I'm picking this as my number 1. I would describe it as Walter Mitty meets Irving Welsh, right? So it's about a pot washer at this hotel. So it's quite grimy, grungy kind of thing. And there's lots of toilet humour in there, which I love, obviously. And other things why I've put this at number 1 then. So the narrator doesn't have a name, is just known as You. So it is all second person, which that's one thing I like about it, because he's pulled that off, and that is incredibly hard to do over a sustained, a whole novel. There's very, very few novels that are written like that, and this is the only one I've read. I believe there are others out there, but it is very hard to do. I've even read short stories trying to do it, and they've not pulled it off for the entire thing. So that's number 1 reason. Number 2 is because the narrator is full of self-loathing and quite alienated, fails to have any kind of real meaningful relationships. That's kind of, I can really get behind that and really relate to that. That's kind of a bit of me. Another reason is it feels very American. It reads very, I did think it was American for the first maybe even 100 pages. All of a sudden there was like a reference to maybe somewhere in the UK, and I was suddenly like, oh, okay, so it's not in America then. I love American fiction, so maybe that's another reason why I really, really love it as well. I think it's maybe slightly more literary than his other books, and I do like something that's a bit meta and references On the Road in a very clever way that I love at one point. And maybe the real reason I've picked this is just because it was my first. It was the first one that I read, and it came as such a total surprise how brilliant it was and how much I loved it. This one then, because I've not talked about this. So this little chapbook is a follow-up to this. I loved this. I was given this by Paul at Badger Books. This came out on Badger Books. That's the small publisher. And so Paul gave this to me. I was at a book event thing last week. I was going to try and kind of finish the book I was reading and do this afterwards, do things, properly. But I couldn't resist it. I just read it all on the train, pissed some people off on the train because I was laughing too much. So this is where the narrator from here, the You narrator, decides that he's going to be a writer and try and get published. Obviously, I can really relate to that, the struggles of a struggling writer. So it's very, very, very funny. More lovely literary references in there as well that I really like such as to Kafka and things like that. It's signed, so that kind of made my day when I saw that it was signed. And this, right? So look at the dedication for all you dreamers. Literally the day before I got this, I'd made a video and referred to myself as a dreamer. So there you go. Number 1, my top choice for Drew Gummerson. Right, I'm putting it number 2 then, Saltburn. It was very difficult to choose between the Flamingo Hotel and this one, but I did end up, for those reasons I've just said, but it was very, very close. So Saltburn is 6 interconnected stories that are all set in this place, Saltburn-on-Sea, which is, if you've seen my original review of this book, is a real place where I would love to go there, actually. So it's a seaside town in the UK. So you get really value for money for this because it's 6 stories. They don't really feel like short stories. Each one does feel like a novel in itself and is a standalone thing, even though they are connected. So that's the first thing. And it just has this cast of, you know, wacky, weird. How on earth he comes up with all of these characters and their backstories and everything, I will never know. You know, the guy is a genius. As you know, I do think that about Drew Gummerson. So that's the first thing to say. And I would say, if I was going to kind of, you know, sum it up sort of thing, I would say it's like Catch-22 meets Heidi Eye, or like a camp Catch-22 or something. So there is some little bits of like more political stuff than he's done before, maybe. But still has that, you know, overriding sense of humour and just bonkersness. But a real big reason why I love this so much, I'm going to tell you a little story now. Last week, when I went to Nottingham to this book event, my path to Waterstones in Nottingham coincided or collided with or crossed with a trans pride march. So I was, you know, quite happily just kind of stood and watched the march go by, watched the parade go by. And it took a while. And I was just standing there kind of just soaking up the atmosphere. And I just got such an overwhelming like sense of elation. And, you know, a big part of me wanted to just go and join in, wanted to go and join them. So this book kind of did that for me. This book, I described it as Drewphoria when I finished it, because it just left me with it's this euphoric kind of sense of just queer joy, such a celebration of queerness. And he does that so well, Drew Gummerson. And yeah, so I don't think I've ever read anything that encapsulated that feeling, that physical feeling of, you know, kind of connectedness and sense of belonging, you know, in a book. As this one does. So for the queer joy, for the sheer Drewphoria, I'm putting this one in second place. Number 3 then is me and Mickey James. So this is, I would describe it as Spinal Tap meets With Nail and I, or like a sort of queer retelling or reimagining of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. So it is about me, which is the unnamed narrator, and Mickey James. They are friends. It is a tale of friendship. And I would say you get that a lot with Drew Gummerson, like, you know, found friendships often, or, you know, found family, I should say, shouldn't I? So it's about these two, and they are, lovers, friends, and bandmates. And they have, you know, this dream to make it on the music scene. You get the sense that the narrator maybe is working hard at this, you know, let's make it on the music scene dream, more for Mickey than it is for himself. So Mickey James is kind of full of self-loathing because he is a hunchback. You don't read many books about hunchbacks, you know, and I guess some people would say, oh, you know, he doesn't have the right to tell that story or whatever, but I think he does it brilliantly, absolutely brilliant, respectfully, you know, absolutely. So, and it's really funny, lots and lots of laugh out loud moments, lots of funny songs. You get to travel the world in this book. I love that about it. And again, there are some just, you know, wacky out there characters, as always, with Drew Gummerson. That one is my number 3. And this one actually came out on, I'm putting it at number 3, but it was the one that actually came out on a major publisher, or an imprint of a major publisher, because this was picked up by Jonathan Cape. And for some God knows what reason, they couldn't sell. They failed. Drew did not fail. They failed to sell it, so sales didn't do great. So, you know, go out and buy this book. Just as a footnote to that, I didn't realise when I was reading this. So the band is called Down by Law. That's their band name. And that is a reference to a Jim Jarmusch film, which I've not seen, actually. I have watched quite a few. I love a bit of Jim Jarmusch, actually. And I watched a lot of his films when I was at uni, actually studying films. But yeah, I didn't pick up on that. I didn't realise that when I was actually reading it, that, yeah, it's a reference to another great artist that I love. So number 4 then is The Lodger, which was actually Drew's first book, I believe, came out in 2012. So I'll explain now why I've done it in this order then. So why did I not start at number 4 and build up to my number 1 choice, The Flamingo Hotel? I didn't like this as much as the others. This is an honest, I'm going to give an honest review now of this. It wasn't my favourite book, but I'm not going to, you know, lie. But I think the reason why I didn't like it as much as the others is because I'm not the target audience, right? So if you like Leonard and Hungry Paul, which was a massive book, it was a kind of sleeper hit, wasn't it? A kind of surprise hit. Obviously they've done it was a BBC that's made a TV series out of it. So it's kind of a bit of I suppose it's a bit of a cult classic, isn't it? Like a quiet cult classic. I just didn't like it. I DNF'd Leonard and Hungry Paul. I did not DNF this, right? So I actually preferred this to Leonard and Hungry Paul. So if you like Leonard and Hungry Paul and you want a kind of queer, happy, hardcore version, a dirtier, smuttier version of Leonard and Hungry Paul, then this might be the book for you. If you are a gay man and you are looking for gay representation, gay relationships, if you're looking for that, then absolutely maybe check this out. If you're a Matt Cain fan, but you maybe want something a bit grittier, a bit grimier, maybe check this out, right? So it is a friends to lovers kind of thing, but it also, as you can probably tell from the cover, it also does have a crime element to it. There are some nice kind of cliffhangers on some of the chapter endings, which I thought it's a very well plotted book. I would say that about it. It's quite chunky. It's his chunkiest one. Looking at that, it's very Hitchcockian, isn't it? And there is a Hitchcock film called The Lodger, so I'm sure that is a reference to that. But also, I do wonder, I'd love to interview Drew one day. I do wonder if this was, slightly inspired by, I know that Drew loves Patricia Highsmith. She's one of his favourite writers. So I wonder if there's a bit of that going on with in terms of the influences sort of thing. Okay, so this is about a gay guy, Honza, who is looking for a lodger. And at the beginning of the book, he's advertising for a lodger and he interviews a few people who are prospective lodgers. And one of them says to him, little spoiler here, this is probably the only spoiler I'm going to do. Little spoiler. One of them says, when he comes for this interview, do you accept pets? I think he says, well, I don't have a garden. And he goes, well, what's my goat going to do then? And I think that because I'd just read 7 Nights at the Flamingo Hotel, I then thought this is going to be a book about a guy who takes in a lodger and him and the lodger and the lodger's goat. And that's what I want. I wanted it to be that book, but it isn't. It very much isn't that book. Okay. I would say, right, I'm going to say something now and then I'm going to immediately contradict myself, right? But it is deliberate, so hear me out. I would say that this book is more conventional, or the most conventional of all of Drew Gummerson's books, right? But it absolutely isn't conventional. It just is compared to his others, right? When I was at this book event at the weekend and Paul from Badger Books was talking about how, nobody else would have published 7 Nights. And I was a bit like flabbergasted by that. I'm like, I don't get it. If I love something, I therefore just think that, well, everybody should love it. And I struggle to understand why other people don't love it as much as I do. Maybe that's my autism, but So this is about a guy who takes in a lodger, they become friends, and then it's a friends to lovers thing. So it's about Honza and Andy. I loved the character of Andy. Andy is the lodger. I absolutely loved him. I quite liked the family dynamic. So Honza has a mum who he is quite estranged from. I quite liked that. I quite liked the tension and the conflict in that relationship because I could sort of relate to that. He has a sister, and again, that's quite a fraught relationship. She's a sex worker. I liked the way that he depicted sex workers in this book. Again, it's done respectfully and it's handled really well. I think I liked the character of the sister a lot. But ultimately, yeah. And he has a nephew as well. The sister has a young, I can't remember, I think his name might be Nicholas, I think. And Honza very much, loves his nephew, and you get the sense that probably he would like to be a parent one day. So this is very much, I would say this book kind of like endorses family values, which is just not really me. There's a lot of gay sex in there, quite hardcore gay sex. Well, and I'm not a fan of that really. Not to be prudish or anything like that. I'm asexual, I'm just not into sex in a book or in a film or in a TV or whatever. So that's another thing I think why it's not for me. There's a lot of laughs in there though, and there is a really, really brilliant toilet gag in there, which did have me howling with laughter. So I loved that. It's very well plotted. I absolutely loved the character of Andy. I would love to ask Drew, actually, like, if he toned it down for this, if he toned down the absurdism and the, you know, the wacky out there-ness that you get in his other books, because it is, yeah, like it's. I'll tell you what, right? This is kind of grounded in reality. It's a guy who lives in a regular house on a regular street, has a regular job, that just gets involved in some interesting capers kind of thing, yeah. Whereas with the others, I think you just get more. They're a bit more out there in terms of they don't feel like that, even though Saltburn is a real place, right? They just don't feel like they are set in the real world. And I love that. I love a book that is, you know, offers an escape. But, and this, I'm so high maintenance when it comes to what I like. I don't like fantasy, right? But I love that absurdist thing where you take something and then just like, kind of, you know, blow the doors off it and just go all out on the kind of, you know, ridiculous, absurd scenarios and humor and characters and yeah. And this just, yeah, was a bit lacking on that for me. But yeah, I would like to ask him if he did kind of tone it down. So yeah, you know, it's just not for me, this one. But that is obviously, it's an honest review that I've given, and you know, it is very personal, obviously, to me, what I've said about it. So if you are looking for, you know, some books for Pride Month, you can still get in under the wire. We're still in Pride Month. So if you're looking for some queer joy, if you are looking for a writer who does represent the queer spectrum, it's not just, you know, sapphic romance or, you know, gay male romance or, you know, whatever. It is like, you know, you do get, especially in this, you get like the whole shebang, the whole spectrum. And this one actually very ambiguous, which again was another thing that I loved about it. I should have said that. Yeah, it's quite ambiguous in terms of the sexuality. And Drew has even said he's not even sure of the, you know, and I love that. I love the ambiguity of it. So there you go. That is my complete rundown. Drew recently so if you want to get behind this writer, obviously, as well as buying his books, subscribing to him on Substack as well. And he does share sometimes, you know, he shares a lot about writing and his writing process and what he's up to in his writing. But he did share the other day one of his stories, a story called Zach, which is a lovely short story. So I'll find the link for that and I'll pop that, you know, down in the description down there for you. But yeah, keep an eye on his Substack for what's going on with Drew. That's it. I'm going to check out now. Keep reading. Take care. Catch you later.